guys, welcome to the Soul on Fire show. I am so excited to be back. I had COVID and I was out for a bit for about 2 weeks, but I am back live, and I actually today have such an amazing show for you. I'm so grateful to be here. My two new best friends, Michael and Jill, are here with us. We're going to talk about spiritual relationships, getting to the vibration of love, Christ consciousness, and understanding what it takes to have a marriage that is unbelievable, and what it takes to actually have a business and a thriving life, and moving and through entrepreneurship and understanding what it takes to truly be in a God-centered world and live your life from a God-centered place. Thank you guys for being here live. Thank you so much for being on the replay. I am so excited to be live again, guys. I'm telling you, the last 2 weeks, it kicked my butt, but I am live now, and I'm here with two amazing humans that are going to change your world. Grab a cup of coffee or some tea. Sit down with us for the next hour, guys, because we are going to talk spirituality. We're going to talk Christ consciousness. We're going to talk relationships and marriage and business, and understanding the vibration of money and wealth and what that looks like in Christ consciousness. So I am going to bring them right on. I know I normally do an entire segment by myself, but these guys are so amazing and so incredible. I actually met them about a month ago and just hit it off with really both of them separately, but they are so beautiful together, and I had to have them on together. And so I'm going to bring them right on and not even do a whole segment. Hi, guys. How are you?
Hi. So excited to be here.
I'm so excited for you guys to be here as well. I actually didn't even do an introduction. Normally I do like, your bios and your introductions. So let me introduce you both, because you're so powerful and you're making such impact in this world. And thank you guys for the work that you're doing. So Michael, I know that you used to be a former police officer. Now you're like this massive entrepreneur. I met at your event, right? I was a guest at your event. Thank you for having me. Yes. And then I knew I had to connect with your wife, because you and I were like, oh my God, hi. And it was like so instant, and I knew I had to connect with Jill, and then the second that I connected with Jill, we were like instant best friends, right? So I know that you're like this powerful entrepreneur, and massive difference in your life. And Jill, I know you're a nurse and you're a podcaster, and you're doing incredible things in this world too. Why don't you tell our audience what you guys do and how truly you just have gone from where you were to where you like are now, which is so massive and so beautiful.
Love it. Well, first off, thank you so much for your heart.
Yeah. Love your heart.
It's incredible. Yeah, it is. It really is. I'm over here tearing up, just seeing what passion you have for, obviously, to get the word out there. Right. And really, be an influence and help people. So first off, thank you for that. The question, I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll let Jill share as well. And you could obviously direct questions. One thing for me, I joke with people, but I tell them, I'm very, very blessed. I'm highly favored. And I recognize that, right? God has a massive plan for my life, and it hasn't always been that way. If you're okay with it, I don't mind sharing a little bit about my past, and where my heart comes from. And I think, that's what really attracted me and Jill to each other in the beginning, is we both have really broken pasts. And, our brokenness is really what brought us together. But that being said, I basically, define myself as a Christian. When you talked about, being somebody that loves what they do, I truly love what I do. I think deeper behind that is what I really get to do is I get to lead people to a better life. It wasn't always that way. I grew up in today's society. I came from a very broken family. My mom left at 5 years old. My dad remarried at 7 or 8. I came from a step family. I struggled with a lot of favoritism, a lot of, seeing a lot of things that just made me feel less than, right? I was raised apostolic Pentecostal. I was forced to go to church. I literally told myself at 17 years old, I knew there was a God, but I'm not going back to church. I ended up chasing what I thought was happiness. I thought really, going out and, different things. So we'll kind of leave that for later on. You can probe at that stuff in the story. But I ended up I've worked since I was 13, 14 years old, worked my butt off. I saw that from my dad. My dad literally worked for 42 years for one company. And then I ended up just following his footsteps on that front, being a hard worker. About 20 years old, 19 years old, I went on my first ride along. 20 years old, I got hired by the Anaheim Police Department as basically a brand new police officer. I went through the academy, really chased, success, so to say, number one in arrest and control, just such an incredible experience. But 8 years into being a police officer, I found myself at a rock bottom, right? I was in an environment that wasn't supporting the best version of who I was. I really am grateful for the experience, but I almost lost everything I did it all for, which is my wife, my kids, my family. Everything that I do work my butt off for is to have what we have today. So that being said, ended up transitioning into, I say, police work. I went from police work to the CIA, right? Credit, income, and assets, where we went into mortgage. And then, it was a crazy transition for us because we met each other when I was in my 20s, early 20s, and it was a stable, she loved me because I was a secure police officer, the whole 9 yards. But growing as a couple together, right, led us down this path where, I hit rock bottom at 28. Most powerful part of my story is, I can sit here in front of millions of people and tell you my certainty that the Lord is the rock at the bottom. It's incredible, right? And it's really, when I hit rock bottom and I asked for help, God showed up. So that's where I was at. That I've had many of those moments, but there was one of those moments where I look back and I'm like, man, I couldn't have done it. I wouldn't be here in front of you today if I didn't have my Savior, and just so grateful to be here. We ended up starting going to Saddleback Church, right? Saddleback Church was just such a blessing, like to be a part of Saddleback Church. And that was when I went back to church at 28 years old, got to bring her with me, got to bring, our oldest. And then we raised our family within Saddleback Church. It was a system that really led you to a better life. And I love how Saddleback really related and connected. It was like Disneyland, And I'll tell you what, if in my opinion, if church is anything like, if heaven is anything like Saddleback Church, we're going to be pretty happy, right? Yeah. And the reason I ran from church when I was young is because of, like, literally it was scary. If I brought kids to church, they'd be like, this is weird, that kind of stuff. And I just love what Pastor Rick Warren's done. Through that, I've met my mentors, like, not to say, billionaires, right? Incredible people, but it was through prayer that it happened. And then ultimately, we've gotten to where we're at today because of God's grace and because of, the ability to find mentors and coach us and mentor, and work on our marriage together. It's been a rough path. Don't get me wrong. Like, nothing is easy, right? It's all been a lot of work. But that being said, I don't want to hog the mic. So I want my beautiful wife to talk.
He's so funny.
Jill, tell us about you, because I know, your heart is so pure. You're pure divinity, right? And Michael, you and I met, and I was like, oh my God, this man is such a man of God, and we had such a beautiful connection instantly. And Jill, it was very, very similar for you and I just believe that. And this is really my belief that God is calling couples to come together that are at higher vibrations and moving together as couples to change love and change marriage, because there's so much with, the player and everybody is just not really being conscious, right? And living as the men and women of God that we're supposed to be. And so maybe talk about that, because that's such a powerful thing in your relationship. Is God is just center. I know God's the center of both of your worlds, and I knew that within the 30 seconds that I met both of you guys. But let's talk about today's society, how it's just so, love is so broken, right? It is so narcissistic, and it is so egoic, and it is not what God intends it to be. And I believe that couples like you are coming together to show the way and be the pave makers for the rest of us, right?
Yeah. I think kind of like what you're saying, like, in order to be a change maker, we first have to embrace change in that too, right? Like, and that's kind of what each of our stories have taught us in life. And I think that, like, if you in the Bible, for instance, like, God didn't choose like the perfect people, right, to lead people. he chose people on very different paths than he was on. And I think that's like important to know as we like lead people. Like the person most equipped to help others are those people that have been through struggles themselves. And I think that's like where my passion comes from, in wanting to lead others and wanting to like be an example, like being that we both came from broken families. Like I was raised by a single mom, and, I didn't have a dad in my home that showed me what it's supposed to look like, right? Like I'm coming into this marriage and I'm like, I don't even know what your role is really, because I didn't live that. And that was really hard for us in our marriage, like figuring out like, I'm still me as a person. Like, how do we, come together? And we do a lot of this, like we're in our own little circles. And, I think like it just, God brings us back to a center so that we can rotate around one circle in our own beings, but together, and we get to do the things that, because we're totally different people, but we're on the same path. And I think it's important for us, and what has also, being God at the center has also helped us is we're here to break the cycle for our children. Like we didn't get to see, the parents together growing up. We didn't get to have that family game night, at home, or, showing our children we just want that family with God at the center. And so we're here to just break that cycle and prove you can do it. And it's not easy. And we're be the first ones to tell you it's not easy. Like we've been through a lot, but we keep showing up. And I think it's just being intentional. You have to be intentional about what your day looks like. Like we start our day with Daily Hope, which is Pastor Rick's podcast, and we'll listen to that in the morning when we wake up together. And that's like our little piece of, advice we take for our day. And so we start it, and then we say a prayer at the end of the day when we lay down together.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
I think that's the core, is you start your day and you end your day with God, right? And
yeah.
let's talk about that. Let's talk about the divine feminine and the divine masculine energies and bringing those to the table in the marriage.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important. And deep in my show, I talk about usually, and this is what I teach about being in the divine feminine and receiving, and then the divine masculine and leading, right? And so understanding that it's our responsibility to be in spiritual mature relationships, right? It's our responsibility to bring that out to the world. Let's talk about how you have to show up, because you said show up. And I think that's one of the most important things. I think one of the things in today's society is people are so flighty. And the second that it gets tough and there's, fire to the iron, people bail. And so let's talk about showing up and sticking and the commitment of the divine feminine and the divine masculine.
So for me, like, just like going back to like two different people, that, femininity and masculinity, well, he shows up for me in so many ways too. But more so it's just like understanding that we're different, and being able to take those pieces and like we're different for a reason, right? Like those two things in the end attract, like that's the masculinity and the feminine, it's energy. And being able to work together. And what would you say?
Yeah, I think, for a man, showing up, this is probably not going to be popular when men listen to this. But, I think that it's got to be, and I actually just had this conversation with a couple of my teammates, and, it's really a partnership, right? Just like we would do in a business, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, your role is this, my role is this, we have this set up, right? And just because at the end of the day, like, I don't like doing that, right? I need to do that. So, for me in our marriage, something like, I kind of pride myself is like, I do like to help around the house. If I can, I'm going to, like, she kind of cracks up, like she's got her way of doing stuff. But if I can do the dishes, right, that's a great thing. If I can wash, clean the house, or I can clean the kitchen, at least help pick this up, right? Ultimately, it's a partnership when it comes to that, hey, guess what? It's 7:00. We got to start getting the kids down. Babe, I got the kids. I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to get them showered up. Or, hey, you go get the kids showered up. I'm going to clean the kitchen. I know that, the cleaners are coming tomorrow or whatever, right? There's little things that we work on together. Same thing. She does not like cooking, right? The reality is, like, I actually enjoy it, right? And, the traditional family shows up, the wife cooks and the man sits down and be served. But the reality is it's a partnership, and whatever you enjoy, like, I enjoy serving her, right? And that's where it like turns into like a conversation. Like, I want to treat her like I want my daughter treated, right? And if you start to look at it that way and you understand, like, I'm teaching my kids, my daughter, how to be treated by the way I treat my wife, right? Which is maybe, hey, maybe that's a little bit of extra love here or there, that's the way that I think the man really should show up. And, at the end of the day, it might not be backed by popular demand, but the reality is, it is a partnership, it's a growth. And that's how I see, anything in my life is I want to be able to show up. I want to be my best version of myself, but I can't be that best version of myself if she's not the best version of herself. And if that means that she's got to slave over the stove and do all these things that she doesn't like, right now she chooses to go to work because she loves that. Like, if I kid you not, my wife is the best critical care nurse, spirit led, like, literally walks into a room, knows when God is calling her, knows what she's going to need in that room, knows how to run the room, like, to a whole nother level. Right. And then at the same time, like, I recognize that, I understand, like, her God-given gifts. So now the conversation is, I know that she likes to control things this way or that way. I'm cool with that. Like, I like that. I like the ability to be able to say, hey, this is where we're at here. Great. Now it's like, hey, perfect example is like, hey, we have a financial obligation. I went through this phase where it was like my business, I'm making these decisions, and guess where that led me, right? Not in a good position. So it's really like, as much as I don't like asking for permission, it's a partnership. And it's like, hey, we got to make this decision together. And that's something that we're really working on consistently. And I think that we all, as men and women, right, no matter what your role is in the family, we have to work as a partnership. And it might be different for everybody, like what they enjoy doing, what they don't enjoy doing, but we have to function as one. And that's what Christ says is, we come together as one. As truly as that sounds, like, how does that look? It might look a little different for different people, but I believe that that's how we should show up.
Well, that's the divine masculine right there. And that's what I want to get
Right.
now is that. So we are going to take a quick break, but I do want to ask very, very quickly, because I know in our world, Michael, it's crazy, right? We're speakers, we're all over the world, we're in big events. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of, you're being pulled in a lot of different directions, right? I mean, that's very, very apparent to the world. But one thing I have noticed consistently with every single powerful speaker that I've ever seen has a beautiful.
Your microphone's going low. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's just low.
Oh, it's low. Okay.
Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, but it's a little low.
Okay. So one thing I was saying is that every single speaker that I have ever met in our world has a beautiful divine feminine standing by next to them, right? And so the women are the rock, and the men are the ones that are, the face of the brand most of the time and out there, but the women are the rock behind the scenes, right? And so I want to take a quick break, because we have to take a quick break, and then I want to come back and I want to talk about how you allow each other to be in the limelight. You allow each other to be in the spotlight when it's time for each of you to be in the spotlight, because it's super important. And then integrating God into business and your life and being parents and how that looks, because it's so important to understand that you said partnership, Michael, and I know that that's really a big, big thing, is that many speakers, especially, I mean, you're in a very, very powerful platform. You have a huge platform, and I know from where you are and from where I am in our lives, you guys can't do it alone. Like, people try to do it alone, and if you don't have every single man that is successful that I know that's in our world has a beautiful woman standing on their side. Rock, and they're rock. And there's a missing piece in a lot of men's life, because they think it's about them and the ego and being on stage, and then they lose sight of how important their wife actually is in their or not just the wife, but the woman in their life, the divine feminine, grounds them and brings them back home with all the chaos. right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll tie it all together, and we'll be
Sounds great.
Stay tuned. We have so much more coming in, and stay tuned for more about business and love, and we will be right back.
Perfect.
Welcome back. Fire Show. I'm so excited to be here. Riddell, we're talking about consciousness. How God has life. So we spoke about a lot of.
Mm-mm. Oh, no, it's muted. It's muted.
Muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's much better.
There we go. I'm sorry, guys. Sorry. I'm sure
that's okay. Good old technology.
Yeah, technology glitch there. That's never happened before. I just pulled my mic out. So we did speak in the first segment about conscious marriage and understanding how important it is to have a conscious marriage and being the divine feminine, the divine masculine, being partners in a relationship. Let's talk about business, and let's talk about family, and let's talk about understanding. How did your business change when you decided to bring God into your business? Because that, I think, is so important. The world that we live in is a really, there's a lot of douchebags in our world, right? And being on stage, that's a lot of attention. There's a lot of ego. Let's talk about how you stay in Christ, in consciousness. And you truly, I mean, your event was amazing. It was God-centered. There was so many beautiful things that came from your event, right? And you could tell that there was no ego, but that's not the case in our world at all. So let's talk about bringing God not only into your marriage, but into your business, and how it truly just transforms you from, that was one of the most conscious events that I've ever been to, by the way. Thank you. Because it was just incredible. And I had tears by the end. So it was amazing. And beautiful. Every single speaker was conscious. Every single person I met there was conscious. It was just so God-centered, and it was beautiful.
Love it. So to answer the question of bringing God into your business, it has to be a conscious decision. I think there's too many weekend warriors that are Christians on the weekends, and they talk about it on Sunday, but Monday through Friday comes around and nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to acknowledge it. I'll give you a quick story about how I brought, the Lord into my business. And it came through, obviously, naturally, just who I was, and hitting rock bottom, right? I tell you, the rock bottom is truthfully, like, when you remember that feeling and you know that, like, you want to tell people about what it is that helped you, right? And ultimately, for me, one thing that I did when I got out of police work, because police work was all about, you don't ever share your family. You don't do this. You never know what criminals are going to come and try to kill you, right? It's like, it's that kind of like environment. There's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of things that you're dealing with. And it's like, well, holy cow, like, I don't want to put myself on social media, right? I don't want to be that person that someone stalks me and hunts me down. And I never did wrong by people, but hey, I had to do my job, right? So now the conversation around it, when I got out of police work, and I hit rock bottom, one thing, I went to some marketing courses and started doing some marketing for different platforms. And the two things they said, and do not do, and it was weird to me when they said this, because it just didn't align with who I was. They said, don't talk about politics. And I said, okay, I can align with that. Right. And don't talk about your faith or religion. Right. And I said, you know what? I can't align with that. Right. my faith, and whether it's religion, I've got different viewpoints on that. I've got some of the most incredible friends that are in different religions, and I also know that at the end of the day, like, God is there for all of us, right? So now the conversation around it is, I want to talk about my faith. And the reason I want to talk about my faith is it's because where I'm at so consciously, right? I went into social media, right, with the opposite approach. Like, you can scroll back to 2016 when I started on social media and Facebook platform specifically, and I wasn't afraid to talk about my faith. And ultimately, the bigger part of that is I would go into meetings. At that time, I was meeting with a lot of real estate agents and different people of that stature. And, for me, it made sense for me because I defined who I was. And ultimately, it made sense for me in every single meeting to tell a part of my testimony and just to bring up the fact that, I am faith-based, right? And at the end of the day, it did nothing but exploded my business, because at the end of the day, what did it do? It gave me the business partners I wanted to work with, not the ones I didn't want to work with. Secondly, like, the ones that you don't want to work with, they're the ones that are the biggest headache, biggest pain in the butt. So now the conversation around for my business and bringing God into my business, like, for me, like, when you test God, like, he says it, test him with your tithes, right? There's no time that you can ever not be outgiven by God, but you have to have faith first to give. And giving isn't, hey, God, give it back to me, right? Give it back to me plus 10. No, it's, here, God, take it and give it back when I'm ready. Right. So that's been a big part of our relationship. And I think to the point where I've almost just been so open to that, and then bringing the rock in, like you just said, right, to be able to be like, okay, also protect some of our money because it's God's money. And now let's work together in our business, in our marriage, in our family, right, to be able to hit and get to where we want to go with what we're doing and our goals in business. And then obviously having the God-sized dreams to be able to go out and say, hey, you know what? This is what our plan is, right? And this is what my plan is. This is what her plan is. But this is where we come together and we really want to help people. Here's how we want to do it, So that's kind of the conversation around, I've brought God into, the workplace, and I'm not afraid of that. I've actually gotten to a point where I actually left a company that told me to take a post down because I talked about the Lord and their logo was in the background. And I said, no, I'm sorry, but I'm not taking it down. Right. You got to stand for something or you'll die for nothing. Right. And that's the life that I've lived. I know, I understand. And the reality is, for me, right, I made that very straightforward. Here's where I'm at. I'm a believer. It's not like I'm a tiptoe Christian and I kind of believe, I kind of don't. Like, I know where I'm going, right? That's the conversation. It fires me up, as you can tell,
Yeah, well, I love it because you guys are so both all in. And I think that's what, like, we both separately, Michael and I met at the event, and then Jill and I, but it was instantly, we started talking about God, and it was like, it was right there, but we didn't care. It wasn't like, oh yeah, it was just like, no, this is our faith. And we went right into it. And I love that you use your platform, and I do as well. And I think that this is what God is calling all of us leaders to do, is to use our platform as God's voice, right? We get to use God's voice through us, and bring it out to the world. So let's talk about how, like, when you weren't in alignment, and let's talk about, like, the lowest points of your marriage, if you want to, and the lowest points of your business, and how, when you pulled it, everything, I give all my glory to God. And the highs and the lows, because the lows actually catapulted me into my highs, because it allowed me to get back into the vibration of God and understand where I wasn't in alignment with God, right? And so I believe without question that when we're at our lows, it is showing us that we're not in alignment with God, and it's showing us where we could be better in our life, whether in our relationships, in our money, in our finances, with our as parents. Excuse me. So what about the lows in your life and your marriage and your business, and how did that, like, catapult you to where you are? Because you've got some big names behind you. I mean, really, really big names, and super, super successful platform. And how is that? I have the same, and I'm just a soccer mom, right? I'm tomorrow I'm going to a soccer tournament, right? I'm a TV host. And I'm going, and it's the reality is that we have to balance this crazy world that we live in, but we also have to really be grounded in just being normal parents and being in a relationship and showing up. But the lows, I believe, got me higher than I've ever been in my life.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think just to start, I feel like we've been lucky in that we've had both of us have had like super low lows, but when one person has been at a low, interestingly enough, the other person wasn't. And so like we've really like done this, and which I think has really helped us because like we're both, I mean, I'll be vulnerable and say that like when he wasn't a police officer anymore, like, I mean, it was an identity crisis, like for him, but it was also like an identity crisis of him for me, because like I was used to like talking about our problems from work, like, like what you saw at work and what I saw at work, and there's a level of understanding when it comes to like first responders, and like the stories that we have and what we've seen that day or what we, go or how we feel, whatever. So like I was like, well, what am I supposed to talk to you about? Like it felt like this gap almost, and so, and then, you talked about like, when he'd, be leading people and on the stage or speaking or on a meeting or whatever. And in the beginning, I'll be honest and tell you that I didn't really appreciate a lot of it. Like if I, just to be honest with you, and it wasn't until I stopped looking at him, in that light and started looking in myself, that changed. Like it wasn't him. Like he was being this amazing guy and going after what his family needed, and like he was working through an identity crisis too, and instead of me like cheering him on, I was like, I figured out all the reasons I didn't like, XYZ. And so it wasn't until I started digging into me, right? I think that everybody enters a relationship, and this is like when we go to weddings now, this is like literally what we talk about. we go to weddings and we're like, oh man, they have no idea, because there's this shift, like before you get married, there's a shift, right? You have these expectations in your mind of what marriage is going to look like, right? And so like he was a police officer, I was a nurse, I had mapped out my life, right? And like, okay, God, this is what I'm going to do. And God was like, that's funny, like that's not what I have in store for you.
No.
And I was like, well, and I am a little, I have to really put myself in God's hands. And I think in those moments, like he has really put me in my place. And, in kind of digging in my own journey, like, I think it's important to develop yourself, like, and spend time in knowing who you are as a person, like separately, so that you can show up for that other person when they need you in the right way. And so I have been, doing my self journey way shorter than he has. He kind of went through that identity crisis and literally just dug in to who am I, and just really into that self growth. And I was still pondering my old situation. I wasn't embracing the change. And so really, I would say I have become a change embracer, which has really led me on, to the next path of my life. But we can't be change makers, together if we don't first learn how to embrace change in general, whether you created it yourself or it showed up at your doorstep,
I absolutely love that, because I think, you're either in contracted energy or expansion energy, and we're all here to expand, and our souls are here to expand. And it's God in us expanding through that moment. And through expansion, you have to let go of the identity, right? I mean, there's so many times. And guys, I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years, and this month was the craziest month in my life. I ended a relationship, I got COVID, my business like was crazy. I mean, and God was just like, nope, 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 nope. And so I had to trust God time after time after time. And finally I just stopped, and I was like, I think that the reason why I got sick was literally to become a new identity. And I just said, okay, God, what is the identity that you want to accept? And I'm releasing everything to you, and I'm coming back and saying, I am here and I'm open, and whatever it is that is your will at this point. And so the surrender piece was, and I've been doing this for 20 years, and it was like thing after thing after thing there. And finally I just said, okay, God, this is I surrender, right? And so I think that that's such a huge thing, is giving up your identity, because when I think that God takes us to the lows to literally bring us to the next level of his voice, right?
Yeah. Yep. And I think that like we've really, by the grace of God, like through our struggles, like we've been able to still say yes, right? Like, and lean on God in our times of when we don't have strength, like truly, like we've had some lows, and we've literally leaned on God's strength.
I love that. And so what would you say, as far as like being parents, the biggest lesson for your children through the growth would be?
Ooh, that's a good one. What do you think?
Man.
I think we teach them they're never alone.
Yeah, God is always there. That's where my heart was just now. Even if we go through anything, God is never going to leave your side. Yeah. He cares for you. He loves you. He's there for you, right? I think about it. You got me thinking about the lows, and I can tell you on my hand, a couple times that I've yelled at the top of my lungs for God to help me, and then God shows up. It's the craziest ways. It might not be the way you want it to be, but he shows up, he guides you, he shows you which way you need to go, and what it's going to take to put things, in perspective. So for my kids, like, I just pray that, that they do get to see the relationship with God as like, this is Disneyland, right? That's Disneyland on earth, this is what God is. Like, you get to take all your problems and just put them out there and just say, God, help me. Right. And you can rely on him. That's the only person that you can rely on. The only thing you can rely on in this, no matter what,
Yeah. And I mean, it's like, so when I was pregnant at 17, and I remember getting in my car, and I would drive into this parking lot, and I would just pray. And then I would just promise Sion, he's my oldest, I would just tell him, like, I'm going to be the best mom. And I would just basically make that promise to God to, like, give me that strength that I need. And that was a huge, like, life-changing moment, in my life. It was like and he turned the light switch on, and I was valedictorian in my college, and he, right? Like, he gave me that strength. Like, I couldn't have done that by myself, but I knew I wasn't alone in that car, and I think, like, I was physically alone, but not without him,
I think that is such a powerful lesson, and my kids know too. And my kids' thing is I love you always together, near, far, close, and together. And so my kids grew up in a divorce since they were 1 and 2 years old. We've been divorced, but they have always known that it's not just me, that there's no separation, but there's no separation with them and God. Right. And they have always known. And I think it was so easy for my daughter to transition into college, because she had her faith, her understanding of who she was. As parents, we both showed up. We were divorced, but we showed up for them. They felt loved, they felt supported. And there was never a moment in time through all of the darkness. And I've been through crazy. I mean, I have had, like, crazy. Like I was sexually abused. I had an alcoholic father. I had, a crazy journey with the masculine energies. And I still taught them that it is beautiful to love and to trust, and that there is incredible gifts through finding the power within. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come talk about actually connecting back to the power within and understanding that there's nothing external going on. It's 100% internal in your relationship with God. When we come back, because it's really important to understand, and I believe with all of my soul that there's nothing in your external world that's not going on in your internal world, right? And so I want to come back and I want to talk about the inner power that you have when you are connected with God and when you're in alignment. We will be right back, guys. Stay tuned. We have so much to show. Hi guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for being on the Soul on Fire show with us today. Michael and Jill are really knocking it out of the park with absolute incredible nuggets about marriage and being spiritual and connecting business back to God and being parents. So let's talk now about how you create your reality and how it's you're co-creating with God, and it is God in us and our voice that comes through. And Jill, you now have a podcast, which congratulations, by the way. And Michael, you're on stages, and so let's talk about using God's voice through us. But if we're not in alignment with God's calling and our purpose, and bringing out the world to the world on such a big level, like we get to have these platforms, right? We get to change massive lives on these platforms and use our platform for the greater good. But when we're not in alignment, it is so apparent to us that we're not in alignment. Let's talk about that. And let's talk about how when, through the darkness, I go within. Like when this month, I have spent more time with God than anything, like even with my kids, because it was thing after thing after thing. And I was like, okay, God, it's me and you. Like it's me and you. So let's talk about going within and finding that inner voice to get you out to God's voice, to make the impact and the level that you're making.
Yeah, I love that. Something for me that's been a good practice in, turning it into a habit for me has been like a big part of how, I've gotten there. We talked about it earlier on the show, was starting our day with the truth. Right. And, for me, a big part of getting it within is, as much as we want to like rely on our willpower, it's not going to happen. Right. And ultimately, something that's been great for us, and I would say, is training your brain. Right. And ultimately working, we all know, or I know that, 90% of our thoughts come from our past, and the past comes, like, truthfully, what comes with the past: depression, all these other things, right? And if we really want to get into the future, what we have to start to understand is ultimately this beautiful future that you're going to put together comes from a vision, right? Not what you've done, because we've all done this, we've hit this milestone, we've done this, we're trying to raise our identity, so really, when you listen to the truth and the future that God has for you, and if you know that God created you to that voice from within to be great, right? He created you to do incredible things, right? He created you just not only to help other people, but to lead other people to the Lord. Now you can start to embody where you're at in your journey, and really take one more step, right? Because a lot of people are like, dude, I cannot run a marathon, right? Real simple. I can't do it, right? But guess what? You start a marathon taking one step at a time. So for me, right, and I'm still in this journey, right, 36 years old, I'm very grateful to be able to start this personal development journey, and the business coach that I've got, the best coach in the world, is Jesus, right? And ultimately, the way that I've done that, and I'm more of a practical, how do I do it? Daily Hope, right? Podcast that's just in my ear every single day, right? It doesn't mean I jump up and I'm listening to the podcast. It's trying to be there, praying, thank God, this and that. But I want to start my day with truth. And one of Pastor Rick Warren's God-given gifts, this last couple of weeks, he gave his last couple sermons. But we have to start anything we do with the end in mind.
Mm,
Right. So if we know that, hey, I want to be happy, I want to be joyful, I want to do this. And we know that, see, happiness comes from discipline, right? The more disciplined you are, the more happy you're going to be. And if you know that joy, right, truthfully comes from Jesus, right, you're going to just flood yourself with that. I want to be happy. I want to be joyful. So I'm going to be disciplined and I'm going to listen to God's word. And that's what's going to bring me like this vibration that she's like, calm it down a little bit, babe.
Yes.
I cannot not share this with everybody, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I love, and that part of your passion is your spark to inspire, right? And so it is so directed and so purposeful, and it's beautiful. It really is. It really is.
Thank you.
I love that. Yeah. And for me, it's just like when I take, all my internal stuff and then I bring it to God, and then it's funny because like this podcast thing, it showed up in my mind. I met Jenna Kutcher and we ended up going to dinner with her. Love her. But like by like total divine purpose, like and she was the one that suggested I do a podcast. And then once I like put it out there and I started praying on it, it was funny. I didn't search for it. Things started coming to me. Like people ended up in my DM, like, oh, like, let me give you some advice on this. Like, let me do this. And I was like, wow, thank you, God. Like, and the purpose really is it turns my like internal struggle and creates it to be something beautiful and purposeful. And I think that's the whole purpose of the struggles that we go through, is so that we can show up in the world for somebody else. I think that's the most beautiful thing.
I absolutely love that. And I say that all the time, is through your pain is your purpose, right?
Yes.
And the other end of that pain is something that could help somebody else. And so if you take it off of you and you look at how can I use this for the greater and higher good, then it always transmutes, right? Always. I love that so much. So let's talk about like, what would be some key takeaways as like marriage in business, and just like, when you guys are really getting under each other's skin and the kids are going crazy and you have 1,000 things and both of you are exhausted, like what are some key takeaways that you just do to get grounded back into the relationship, back to God, into your business? I'm a big person of like, we are a unit and we have individual lives as well. I'm a big person of space and like, okay, I need a minute. But some people aren't like that, right? And if you're with somebody that's not, needs to be with you 24/7, but you need a minute, like some key takeaways of how to get through the storm, I guess.
So for us, I feel like it's very scheduled. If I'm like being real, like if we're doing this, we will at the end of the day come together, and he's really good at going like, how do you feel? My emotional spectrum is probably like this big and his is this big, so like
that's not true. Yours is like,
he's better at like identifying them, and like, that like growing up as a single mom, I had 3 older brothers and there was no time to talk about your feelings. It was like, you better get your stuff done and move on, and so like we went to trauma therapy together, and we still go. And I think like, so in our home, we say, hey, like I'm feeling, I'm struggling. Like, can we talk tonight? I need 20 minutes to talk about this. And then it's like, okay, let's be intentional about this week. Like what's on your calendar? Because we're both very goal-driven people. And so what happens is we do this. And so in order to do this together, we have to, okay, we're getting off track. And you just have to keep being intentional. And then there is times, where it's like, okay, we're in a funk and we go and we talk about it in therapy. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with therapy. I encourage every person to go to therapy. Like it's been a beautiful thing for us. Like we're 2 different people and we came from broken families. So like, don't be scared to get help or talk to somebody, get a couple that you trust and that you can, like I love like a small group, like at your church or something. If you have like another couple that you can really connect with and like be there for each other, I think that would be great. And just you need to set aside the time and be intentional.
Well, let's talk about that, and then the people that you spend time around. And thank you for that, because I believe, without question, I believe in therapy. I believe I believe that, I'm a therapist, I'm a quantum energy trainer, I'm all these things, and I still have 5 people literally that I pay, and other people, and I still just went through a breakup, right? I mean, it's so you always need things in life, and thank you for saying that, because so many people feel like going to therapy is like it's a crutch, or it's not a good thing. But I believe, without question, it transmutes lives, like it changes lives.
100%. Yeah.
And so let's talk about the fact that the two of you have been on this journey, right? And now your journey is changed, right? You started out as a cop, or and a nurse, and now like you've exploded, and you're kind of, you're still a nurse, but you're going into podcasts. Like, let's talk about letting go of an identity that no longer serves you, and hang and around the people that used to be around, but now, as you're moving into a more conscious, purpose-driven world, it has to be very intentional to your energy that you spend. And I say this all the time, is that the world that we live in, you have to be incredibly intentional on who you spend your time with, because there's a lot of people that pull at you, right? And so it can destroy your marriage. Let's talk about selecting the right people and the right energies to spend your time around.
Love that. Love that. Yeah. I'm a huge believer in truthfully, like, I don't take advice, or I try not to take advice from anybody I don't truly want to, like, at the end of the day, trade places with, or at the end of the day, like, hey, I see that marriage, and one that I can just tell you was incredible to be able to witness and get to be directly mentored by is Ed Milet. One thing that he doesn't put on his Instagram is his marriage and any of that stuff. It's interesting because she's like, hey, you should talk more about like your family life and this and that. But we've been able to be around them, and it was a choice that they have, as far as where they're at. But, one thing when you really get around the right couples and who you give your time to is like, hey, listen, if you want us to be there, I'm going to be there. Right. And obviously we got to talk about it, but it's really listening to your mentors and the people that are in that are in a place that you would be happy to trade places with. Right. And what I'll tell you is, not that he's a billionaire, not that he's got, this and that, he's got an island and all this other stuff, is that when I hear him talk to Jesus and say a prayer, right, you can really start to understand that. And I was like, wow. And then you get to see his wife, who is at a whole nother level when it comes to, like, we sat there across the table and she was talking, and this is something that just hit me, and I've shared it with Jill, is her belief level in him is incredible. They were going back and forth on the table. No, I'm here because of you. No, I'm here because of you. I didn't do anything. You didn't do anything. It was all like just building people up. And, her comment was, truthfully, it was if Ed told me that we're going to go to the moon, I believe him. Pack up and we'd go.
I love that so much. And I have to tell you, I was in tears when he was speaking and I connected so much to his story because it was so much like mine, just with his alcoholic father and everything. But it made me understand like how powerful our voice is and how important God is. Like the fact that, and again, going back to, he had support from his wife, right? That rock that by his side, right? But it's also, he loved her and honored her enough that it was never infidelity. It was never a player. It was never, you know what I mean? And so it's making that priority that, yes, I'm a pretty big deal, but you're even a bigger deal. And I'm going to have, it's, and taking the ego and moving aside. And that's not the norm in our world. It's not the norm in our world. And seeing that and seeing you guys and your love, it's so beautiful. You guys have that same, like I felt that from Milet, and you both have that. You have that. We got this. We're like partners, like truly partners. And in this world, you have to be true partners. And if someone's not, God will show you very, very quickly and cut them out immediately.
I think we're like really good too. Like if we go in a room and we don't know people, like we're really good at like leading instead. Like if you're not sure like what the people are about, like you don't want to get with the wrong people. But if you lead and you know who you are, and who you are as a couple, then nobody there is bringing you down. If anything, you're just rising people up. You know, so I think that that's a key thing too, you know, just being like being able, authentic, and being able to go in an environment and be strong together.
Well, I think authenticity is the highest vibration on the planet, right? And I think that instantly with the two of you, that's the vibration that I found. I was like, they are so real. I mean, and separately, I didn't meet you guys together, separately. Yeah. And it was so, you both talked about each other without the other person being in the room. That was the coolest thing. Like, you know, Michael, you instantly talked about Jill, and Jill, you talked about Michael like the first 3 seconds that we got on. And it was such respect and honor that it was like, this is my person, right? And it was so clear to me, and I don't even know you guys, but it was so clear to me how in love you guys were and how powerful God was in your relationship before I even met this is the first time I've ever met the two of you together, right?
Yeah.
And it was so clear how important each other was, and how important your family was, and how important God was. And it was just beautiful, like beautiful. And that's the difference between somebody that is successful and somebody that's got God's voice in them, and they're going to take it to, you know, at my like that level is you guys have that. It's just so you know. So
I love that. You know, one thing where my heart is, I just want to share with you, and I think this kind of goes hand in hand with what you just said, and I'll make it real quick. You know, we have a choice in what the story we tell ourselves, right? What is the story that you're telling yourself, right? And, you know, there's a difference between loving someone and being in love with someone, right? There's a huge difference, right? And it's a choice to be in love with someone, right? And I absolutely am deeply in love with my wife. And that's a choice, right? I think that most people, us goal-oriented guys, we go and we conquer that mountain, and then we get this next one, and then we go over to the next one, right? But we forget about what we did courting our wife, right? So then what ends up happening is this marriage ends in court, right? Pastor Rick says it all the time. I'm just such a believer in that. Like, it's a conscious decision. And the story we tell ourselves, right? We got to start rerunning the replay. Like, I love this woman more than you could ever imagine, right? I write her a note like multiple times a week, because at the end of the day, like, it tells me, it rewrites the story for me. And I know how much I love this woman. I know the things that we're going to do to change the world. And that's the beauty of being poured into by Jesus, because I know what he built us for, you know?
I love that. I love that so much. Well, we have about 30 seconds left. Where can we find you guys? I love your love. I am so blessed to have met you. God is so, you know, it's amazing. But I went through my 6 degrees of separation over the last 7 years, and I met one person 9 years ago. One person, and it was about 3,000 connections from that one person. Wow. So God works in beautiful, beautiful ways.
So cool.
And so where can we find you guys? Because you're amazing, and you're doing incredible things in this world. And so.
Yes. Go ahead, Ben.
Well, I'm at Jillian Riddell. I think there's an underscore in there, Jillian_Riddell, maybe, on Instagram. My podcast is I'm in the launching phase, so it's coming. It's going to be Life Without Secrets. So it's going to be really fun. We're going to be talking about really what's behind the highlight reel, and we're going to be digging deep. It's all about being your authentic self, because we can all share in the struggles of life on a deeper level. And then I'm obviously on Facebook, Jill Riddell.
And for me, I think the easiest one is The Mortgage Police. So it's the_mortgage_police. You know, really, that's probably the best way to get a hold of me, Instagram. And, you know, I'm just so grateful to be here, and thank you for the time today.
Oh, well, I love you guys, and thank you since the beginning of our journey and our friendship together. I promise you that. You guys are amazing. Keep bringing God's voice through the world, because anything that you guys are a part of, I promise you, I am a part of as well.
So we love you.
I love you guys. You're amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
We love you too.
Have a great day, guys. Guys, what a powerful show. Oh my God, it was incredible. I feel like so elevated, and I feel like we raised our vibration just in the last hour. We learned about conscious marriage. We learned about conscious business. I am so grateful for you guys. You are more powerful than you know. Everything that you want is inside you. Everything that you want is inside of you. You are God in physical form. Open up to God's absolute joy, and he will change your life. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video.